давам думата на госпожа Катрин Якобсдотир за нейната презентация. Може би ще имаме нужда от асистент за мултимедия.
Дистанционно, ако имате.
So good morning everybody. I do hope you understand English. Sadly I cannot speak Bulgarian, but I'm very happy to be here with you. And mainly I will be talking about democracy, not the E part of it, but how the internet can also strengthen democracy. Few words about myself. I'm an MP from Iceland, from the left-green movement. I was a minister in the last government in Iceland from 2009 to 2013. Was the Minister of Culture, Education and Research. And I'd like to use my limited time here to tell you about a few case studies really from Iceland, a few democratic experiments. Iceland was maybe the first Western European country to suffer from the economic crisis in 2008. We had a huge banking system, so the economic crisis hit us very hardly in the fall 2008. There were quite heavy protests in Iceland, which is rather unusual in Iceland. We had a lot of political turmoil. And the government that was in power left its position and a new government was formed. And there was a great demand from the public to have more direct democracy, because people said one of the reasons for this terrible situation, this terrible economic situation, is the fact that the public hasn't been participating enough, showing enough responsibility, being critical enough towards the government and the parliament. So I'm going to tell you about just a few of these democratic experiments, and obviously I will speak about it as a politician and a former minister, and how we who work inside the political forum can actually try to support and gain from these democratic experiments. So I'm just going to tell you about this experiment number one, because I think when you're trying to develop democracy, you need to be innovative and you need to try out a lot of different models in order to get the best results. And the first one is a complete grassroots initiative. It was shortly that after I came into office as a Minister of Education, Science and Culture, I was approached by members of a grassroots movement. They called themselves the Anthill, and they had quite a fabulous idea. They wanted to arrange a national forum where randomly chosen attendees from both sexes from around the country in Iceland would come together and plan Iceland's future. And this is possible, obviously, when you live in a country where you only have just over 300,000 inhabitants. But however, you know, we are 300,000, but still the country is sparsely populated. So it was quite a production. But in November 2009, the National Forum was held, and we had 1,200 people from around the country that came together and talked really about what should be the values of Icelandic society after the economic collapse in 2008. And it was, as I said, it was a totally citizen-based initiative, and obviously they used the internet in all of the organization, finding people to work with this grassroots group, and then all the results were spread out through the internet, through the Facebook and other mediums. So I think this was actually the first important initiative where we were aiming at widespread collaboration, counseling and crowdsourcing, and trying really making experiments how we could increase the collaboration between the citizens and the government. And one of the results, I'm not going to tell you about the values, but here are a few photos. Everybody met in a very big sports hall and spoke together in these random groups. I attended the meeting and it was really fabulous. You met a lot of people from different parts of the country, from different classes, different opinions, and then the results were like which values we should build on our society. This initiative really inspired us in the government. I was in the government for the left-green movement, as I said. The other governmental party were the Social Democrats, and we decided to use this methodology when we were really making our policies and trying to form new policies. How can we use this method coming from really the grassroots? And it was really inspiring to be there. So what we intended to do was to build an action plan for all the regions in Iceland, a new action plan. And we called it regional development plans. And we took this model of national forums and tried to use it. We held open meetings in each region. And the project was really to gather around the table randomly selected people, again, which were invited to come and talk about their region, what opportunities they saw in their region, what was the important project for their region. But we also invited stakeholders, people from the education sector, from the companies in that region, etc. And all these people sat together. They were mixed, if you can say that. So the politicians didn't sit together, the stakeholders didn't sit together, but it was all a mix. And it was really interesting that the results that emerged were totally different from other regional development plans that we have ever had before in Iceland. We're a country that the bulk of the population, around 70%, lives in a quite small, densely populated area, and then we have a sparsely populated rural area. And until then, regional development plans had been made in the capital of Iceland by specialists in regional development. But when we turned out and went to the people and asked them, what is important for your region, we had different results. You could say that, since I come from a green party, I found this very interesting. The regional development in the past was mainly about, okay, here we have unemployment, here we have people moving out of the region, we will build a new factory, and then all the people can get work there. When we asked the people themselves, what do you think is the most important thing to do for your region, we had two things emerging. People wanted more education in their region in order to be able to stay longer at home and get more education at home. And this is where the technology comes in, because when you live in a very sparsely populated area, it's very difficult to have the education that you prefer without having the necessary technology. And what we've been trying to do is to increase educational opportunities through these new technologies. The other important thing that we find out was that when people were asked themselves, they saw a lot of opportunities in their region, smaller opportunities concerning cultural issues, tourism, innovation, etc. They did not want a centralized solution from the government in Reykjavik. So I think this was the most important factors that we learned. When you ask the people themselves, they want to find out the solutions for themselves. They don't want the package. So this was quite a new tactic to form a plan, and this was actually we had smaller national meetings, as you can see. This is the one that was had. We also had this meeting in Reykjavik, and it was a different meeting from all the others because Reykjavik is the capital, and it has of course, maybe there are all the educational institutions, so you got a little bit of different result there than out in the countryside. But it was really interesting that even it was in January and February, the weather was harsh. You know, now it's May and it's actually snowing in Iceland, so you can imagine how it is in January and February. People still came, drove 100 kilometers to attend, just because they hoped that their voice would really matter when the government would make their plans. The sad thing about this, and a lesson to be learned, is the fact, that when we had a new government, they decided to cut down the budget for these regional plans, because as they said, we didn't make them ourselves. My government didn't make these plans by ourselves. We made them with the people in the regions. We made them actually with local politicians from all the parties. So I think what we have yet to learn in Iceland is that if you want to use direct democracy, people from all parties need to respect what comes out of that. We need to respect the results from that, even though we personally have some other beliefs. Even though I personally think that this is the best solution for this, I must really learn to respect the results from direct democracy and if the processes are good. Now, I would like to tell you about the third experiment, which you can say didn't work quite as well as we hoped for. Quite a famous example, which was the wish for a new constitution, because after the crisis there was a very strong demand in Iceland for a new constitution. A lot of people thought that the old constitution, which is actually a Danish-produced constitution, since Iceland was a Danish colony, thought that if we could gather together and make a new constitution, we would probably build a better society. Now, I'm not going to talk how important the constitution is. However, it was the strong wish of the Prime Minister in my government, that we should have a total revision of the constitution, and the first step in that was to give yet another national forum that was held in 2010, where we had just under 1,000 Icelanders from the age 18 to 91, also randomly selected, so you can see we've been using this form a lot. They gathered to discuss the topics that were supposed to be the fundaments of a new constitution. Then it was decided, and a bill passed on our parliament, that Icelanders should vote for 25 people to really write this new constitution. And this was a totally new idea, because up till now, the constitutional powers had been in the hands of parliamentarians, and if you wanted to make amendments on the constitution, you would have to pass a bill through the parliament, have a general election, and then pass it again. So there was an immense interest. We had 523 candidates running for this new constitutional assembly, and a lot of interest. People voted for 25 people. It was a very, I thought we learned a lot from that process, because one of the things that we found out was that our media weren't at all prepared for the presentation and really covering a huge election like this. But I hope they learned something from it. At least I think we did in the politics. But one of the things also that we saw, and that might be a fault, that most of the candidates, not all of them, but most of them that eventually were elected, were well-known people prior to the election. So some people complained, okay, we're voting the representatives of the Icelandic population to write a new constitution, but we only voted for celebrities. And that's always the danger when you're voting for the persons really in this area. But however, okay, the elections for these 25 candidates was in November 2010, and then we already found that there was a very big wave really of criticism towards the whole process. We had a lot of lawyers being very skeptical about this process, politicians from the opposition parties very skeptical, and the results of the voting elections were, they were referred to the judicial system due to an alleged breach of integrity, and the Supreme Court ruled the elections void in the beginning of 2011. The government decided to continue, and they decided, even though the elections were deemed void, we are going to have this constitutional assembly, which parliament will simply nominate. But the whole process was very difficult, as you can already see. It was heavily criticized. It was, as I said, a lot of opponents, not only in the political scene, but also from the establishment, if you can say that, from the judicial system. All the lawyers, or not all the lawyers, but the majority of lawyers were very critical of it. And however, the Constitutional Assembly, which we can see here, 25 people from different sectors of society, they handed the parliament the draft of a new constitution in 2012. We had a national referendum asking the nation, would you like this draft to become the basis of a new constitution? And the majority of the people said yes. Then we asked about 5 subjects specifically, and there were different results, but 2/3 of the voters favored that this draft should become the basis of a new constitution. Then the bill was sent to Parliament, but we never finished actually passing the bill on a new constitution. The Venice Committee came and had some criticism, and we just ran out of time. We had elections in 2013, and the work was never finished. So often when I come abroad, people ask me about the new constitution. Well, the new constitution is still a draft. And this is a lesson to be learned, that when you're dealing with a very big issue like the constitution, I think you really need to focus very deeply that each step that you take is completely guarded. And I think we made a lot of mistakes also in this process. The deep disappointment over this failure, if you can say that, is the fear that we won't have a chance again. But still, I'm an optimist, so I hope that we will have a chance, because I think what has happened in Iceland during all these processes is that the public has become very conscious that they matter and they can make these demands. And that's a huge change since I became first active in political issues, protesting environmental issues, for example, in 2003. I can just feel it, that a lot has changed in the Icelandic public. So that's why I'm optimistic that someday we will have good results, but we made, as I say, a lot of mistakes. And there you can see the president of the Constitutional Assembly, which is a well-known philosopher in Iceland, handing the president of the parliament this draft. So it was a very happy moment, but we haven't yet reached the final stages. So this is also, not all the experiments have a happy ending. The fourth, I'm not going to talk about it because I know Smári and Guðjón here, who are sitting here, they will tell you all about this. I would just like to say a few words, because as the Minister of Education, Culture and Research, I was given the project International Modern Media Initiative. In June 2010, the Parliament adopted unanimously a resolution that was supposed to reinforce the freedom of expression, freedom of speech, dissemination of information and publication in Iceland, protect informants and whistleblowers, and a lot of us saw a lot of opportunities in this resolution, making Iceland really a safe haven for freedom of information in the world, using our green energy not to build aluminium smelters as we have been doing, but to build data centers which use a lot less energy and not polluting as much. So a lot of opportunities and an ideology which I found very exciting. So I got this project as a minister, but it was not a governmental project, and its pioneer was a parliamentarian that's now the captain of the Pirate Party, Birgitta Jónsdóttir. She was not a member of the Pirate Party then, but is now the captain of that party, and she actually managed to create a consensus in the Icelandic parliament about this resolution, which was quite a fabulous work for her. And she is also a very determined lady. So she really pushed my back and said, and Kathleen, now you have to do some work on this. So I managed to get some governmental funding to support the beginning, because what this involved was really revisioning a lot of legislation. We managed to finish, while I was in office, the revision of the media law and also the revision of the law on information. Then the funding was stopped when the new government came in, but now Birgitta has somehow managed to get new governmental funding, even though the government wasn't very interested. So I hope that we will continue, because this might be a very important project for direct democracy in Iceland, because this is all about how we treat information, how we treat the right of our rights to express ourselves, and of course these are the fundamentals for democracy and e-democracy, and using really the technologies to support that democracy. So just a few words about this. But as I said, this progress has been slow in some instances. The funds have been scarce, but hopefully we will move on, and at least a lot of amendments have been made that have been for the greater good of the community. Now, last in these experiments, not least, was one of my key projects as a Minister of Education. I've been telling you about a lot of national forums, and as I said, it was kind of a way, we Icelanders, we are very, when something is fashionable, everybody does it. You can say that in Iceland. So we all dress the same clothing, the same jackets are, worn by everyone that winter, and everybody gained national forums in 2009 and 2010 because it was just the thing to do. And so in 2010, there was a group of enthusiasts that held a national forum on education in Iceland, where we had 300 professionals, enthusiasts, interested people. They convened in the University of Iceland, and I attended the meeting because one of the things that I had to do, we had a very recent law on education in Iceland, and my project was to have a curriculum written. And I could see that the ministry's focus was very much on just building a framework and not talking really about what should be in that curriculum. We should just have the usual subjects, have a framework, and not be too much into what should stand in the curriculum, because as the officials at the ministry sometimes say, it's not our role to have any opinions on what the children learn in schools, but still it's a very important role. And what I gathered from this national forum, the results were that there was a very high importance put on that the Icelandic educational system should be focusing more on critical thinking and critical discourse in the classroom. That the Icelandic educational system had been too focused on learning outcomes, measurable learning outcomes in standard subjects like Icelandic, maths, and the other traditional subjects, which is, and I know you know that, being, I assume, all interested in educational policy, that educational policy is very dominated by learning outcomes that can be measured in international comparison, like the PISA survey, for example. So when people saw these results, they said, okay, critical thinking, how can we measure that? How can we measure critical thinking? What the National Forum said on education, well, this economic collapse is a good example that we are not teaching enough critical thinking. So if you can measure the lack of critical thinking, you can measure it by the amount of this economic collapse. And I think that was quite a good argument. So I said, okay, we need to look at this curriculum. It's not only a framework that we should have X classes in maths and X classes in Icelandic and Danish. We need to think about what are the supreme goals of our educational system. And we sat down, and it wasn't me who sat it down, because we had many meetings with academics, teachers, people from the educational system, students, which was very interesting because they always have a very different view on things than the teachers. And we put down 6 fundamental components that were chosen to mark the curriculum from kindergarten up to high school level, independent of subject, field, or study. And those were literacy, or reading skills, but also what you can call information literacy, being literate to how to both read and understand. Creativity, democracy, equality, sustainability, and welfare, which is actually, which was the 6th fundamental, which I was like, should the schools be talking about welfare? But I was convinced after meeting a lot of people that this was also an important fundamental. So the project of the Icelandic educational system is now, how can we use these 6 fundamentals? For example, I used to teach Icelandic in high school, and I was teaching grammar and literature, etc. How can I talk about, how can I make my students think critically about democracy, about equality, about all these things when they are reading literature, when they are thinking about Icelandic? Because we didn't just want to build, have a subject, democracy, education. We wanted to make the education system really think about how can we act democratically, how can we make our students active participants in society from the beginning. And you can do that by having meetings, making students realize that they actually can have some effect on where their school or educational institution is heading by having meetings, listening to them, and teaching them really all the tools of democracy in order to see that their voice matters. And I think that this is my last slide. This is really a booklet about democracy and human rights. And this is the most important fundament when you come to critical thinking and critical reasoning. I think that if this isn't the role of the educational system in creating human beings that are really up to the project of moving their society, I can't imagine what should be the, I think this is the most important role of every educational system, even though you can't measure the outcomes by having a test. And yeah, okay, good. Because it's not only an applied science, if you wish. So I think that this is really a very important role of the educational system in every democratic society. And the important thing is that this hasn't, at least I was telling you about projects that have been, turned down by our new government, but this hasn't been changed. And I think the reason for that, and this will be my last words, is that when you're doing a project like this that's supposed to last, it's very important to have everybody at the table. And if I would have said, I will have my team here writing a curriculum for the Icelandic school system, I'm sure that a new minister would have thrown that curriculum out of the window. But when we have the universities, the academia, the schools, the teachers, but not least the students as a part of this decision process, I think even though we had to make budget cuts, we had to make several not so very nice decisions about the educational system, people said at least we're doing something exciting now in the school system. So I think that's really the experiment that I'm personally the most proud of, but we probably won't see the results until maybe 20 years' time. And all of these experiments have been very informative, and I think we have learned a lot. And my hope is that we will manage to see some changes in Icelandic society in the next few years and decades. Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.